Hey guys, welcome back. In this video, we are going to talk about the constructors in a class. And a constructor is very similar to an apex method, but there are few differences. The name of a constructor is always same as the class name, and the constructors are auto-called, so they are called automatically when you initialize a class. To understand this, let's bring our previous example where we created a COVID-19 class which had few methods to track the recovery of patients. If you run this class from the anonymous window, you create the instance of the class and then we print the number of patients treated in an area and in the country. So let's observe the output first and then I'll tell you how you can change this output using the constructors. So we get the total number of recovered patient in Jaipur is 0 and total number of recovered patient in country is also 0. So let's break it down and let's try to understand this very first statement where we create the instance of the class. So what do you think happens when we use our new keyword and the class name after that and then the parenthesis that we add after the class name? We have discussed this before and we know the purpose of new keyword is to allocate some memory to this class and put it in the system memory so that we can start using this class and its properties and variables. So it's just to create the new instance of the class. But what about these parentheses after that? So these parentheses belongs to the constructor and each and every class has a default constructor even if you don't define one. So if you don't define any constructor, so if you take a look at our COVID-19 class, we don't have a constructor here because none of the methods shares the same name as the class name. So even if you don't define a constructor, then Apex itself creates a blank constructor behind the scene and you can never see it. So when you use this parenthesis, that blank constructor is called. And you can easily override that blank constructor by defining your own custom constructor, and I'll show you that now. So let's create a new constructor in this class. And as I said, the name of the constructor must be same as the class name. And we are going to create a blank constructor, which means it doesn't accept any parameter. And then let's write a simple statement in this constructor. And we can simply say constructor is called. Let's save this code and let's execute our code again. So here we are not changing anything in our execute statement. We are still using this blank parenthesis, but notice the difference here once we'll execute this class. So we get a statement that constructor is called because now we have a statement constructor is called within a custom constructor of that class. And as soon as you define this blank custom constructor, it overrides the default constructor that Apex creates behind the scene. And now I think you got the idea that this constructor is auto-called when you create the new instance of the class because we see our statement is printing in the debug logs. So you don't have to specifically call the constructor like the way we are calling our methods here. You don't have to use your dot operator to call your constructor. It is something that gets auto-called when you create the new instance of the class. In a class, you can have as many constructors as you want, which is very similar to the polymorphism when we talk about the methods. All these constructors must be having the same name, but the signature must be different. So the number of parameters or the type of parameters must be different. Just to give an example, when we execute this code, we get that recovered patient in Jaipur is 0 and recovered patient in country is also 0. But what if we want to initialize this data in our constructor? So let's say if I create a new instance of the class, let's say Hyderabad, and by default I want to tell my class that there are 5 number of patients that got recovered in Hyderabad. We can easily do that in the constructor. So let's create one more constructor here, and in this constructor we are going to accept a parameter which we'll call the patients recovered. And then we will use this patient recovered parameter value to initialize our recovered in area variables value and then the recovered in country variables value. So you can simply copy our variable here and paste it, and we can simply say that recovered in area is equals to the patient recovered that a user will supply when he will create the instance of the class. And we can also set the recovered in country value as well, and we will set it to patient recovered. So let's save this code and let's go back to our anonymous window and we will execute the same code again. Do you think it will make any difference? Let's notice. It doesn't make any difference. We are still getting the total recovered patient in Jaipur is 0 and the same in country as well. But why? Why this statement doesn't get executed and why we are not getting any other value here? The reason being we still have a blank constructor, and the way we are creating the instance of the class is using this blank constructor. So if you want to call this other constructor, then you can simply pass the number of patients recovered in your constructor itself. So as I said, this is similar to the polymorphism. So here, since we don't accept any parameter and we are calling our constructor without the parameter, that's why the first one is called, the second one is not. But as soon as you provide any value here, maybe like 5, we should see that total recovered patient in Jaipur is 5. And our second constructor method is called not the first one. This time we get recovered in Jaipur is 5 and recovered in country is 5. And also notice that we don't get this statement constructor is called, because this time this constructor was not called, only the second constructor was called. Now let me close all these logs so that we have some space here. So very similar to this second constructor, you can have as many constructor as you want. Just make sure that the signature of the constructor is different every time. Now what if I rename this patient recovered variable with the same name which we have in this class, which is recovered in area. So as soon as we make this change, we need to change it here as well and here as well. Now how does our Apex compiler knows that which recovered in area we are referring to? Are we referring to this local recovered in area variable or this global recovered in area variable? So generally a compiler looks for the local variable first and then goes for the global variable. So if you are using this recovered in area variable within this constructor, then our Apex compiler will always refer to this local variable and it's not going to reach to the global recovered in area variable. We can try it out. Let's save it and let's execute our code again. And this time we should see the recovered patient in Jaipur is 0, but the recovered patient in country is 5. The reason being here we have a different variable which is recovered in country. So how can we solve this ambiguity? How can we tell our compiler that here we want to refer the global variable and on the right hand side we are referring to the local variable? For that we have a very special keyword in Apex which is called this. And this keyword always refers to your class instance. So let's first see how we can use this keyword and then I'll tell you more about it. So here we want to refer to our global variable, right? So you can simply use your this keyword here like this dot recovered in area. So if you use it this way, then your compiler will know that you are referring to a global variable. So this means your class instance. And as soon as you use this keyword, your compiler will know that now you are reaching out to the class global variable instead of the local variables. Let's save this code once again and then execute our code one more time. And this time we should get both our values as 5, 5. Awesome, it's working fine. Now let's cover few more things here. You must have noticed that as soon as we have started referring to a parameterized constructor, our default constructor or the blank constructor is not being called. So how can we call our blank constructor even when we are passing an integer value here? Or in other words, how can we call a constructor from another constructor? So we can use our this keyword for this purpose as well. And as I said, this means your class instance, and here as well we are creating our class instance only, right? So in your parameterized constructor, you can simply call this blank constructor using this keyword. So what you need to do, this and then the blank parenthesis. Reason being, when you use this, it means you are trying to access the class instance, and when you use the blank parenthesis here, this means it will know that you are trying to call a constructor without parameters. If you would have had any other constructor as well with different number of parameters, you could simply pass those parameters here and this will automatically call those constructor as well. But here, since our blank constructor doesn't accept any parameter, we'll call it like this. Let's save it and let's execute it one more time. And this time we will notice that both our constructor is being called. First our blank constructor is called. So this way we are calling our blank constructor. Then this logic is getting executed and then we are calling our print treated method. Now this all is working well. But what if I want to execute this logic first and then I want to call my blank constructor? So can I change the location of this call from here to here? No, it's not allowed, and we will see an error, and it says call to this must be the first statement in your constructor method. So when you call another constructor from a constructor, then this should be the first statement of that particular constructor. So you cannot change the location of this statement. It has to be the first statement in that particular constructor. So this is how you can call one constructor from the another one using this keyword and then the parameters that you want to supply. The last thing that I want to tell you in this video is the purpose of constructor is very simple. If you want to initialize something when you create the instance of that class, then you can use the constructor the way we are doing here. If you want to set this recovered in area field based on the user input when the class instance is being created, then constructor could be helpful here. You can simply accept the value from the user and then set it in your constructor. So this is all in this video. I'll see you all in the next video.